Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Drive Time, where I basically keep you company during some monotonous task, like your commute, or mowing the lawn, or drowning out the noise the other people around you are making at work. Or maybe you use me as a way of falling asleep. So set that timer for about 5 minutes, because I'm probably going to bore you to tears. This one. So before I get to my topic, my burning topic, a little update. By the time you hear this, I will have finished the first draft of the screenplay that I've been wrestling with for it seems like an eternity. And it's my first screenplay, and I have to say never again. It's probably never again until next time. Not my favorite form to write in. If you've listened to my videos and for any length of time, or met me in person, or read anything I've written about writing, you know I'm not one of those whiny, I suffered for my art, now it's your turn kind of writer. I don't complain. I don't ask to have my hand held while I'm writing, or anybody to come my fevered brow. I'm just not that kind of writer. But I could have become that kind of writer writing this screenplay. So, and you've heard me bitch a little bit about it. It's not a form I'm comfortable with, but I'm happy with the end results. I'm particularly happy with the dialogue. As happy as I can be. And I learned a bit in the process. I always knew, obviously, there's a difference between movie dialogue, comic book dialogue, and prose dialogue. But acknowledging there's a difference and recognizing the differences is two different things. And I think I've done that. I think I've come to a place where I can write movie dialogue that is specifically meant for actors to say. So, and following the same rules I always follow for writing. Every scene has to serve two purposes, and if you're doing exposition, don't let the reader know you're doing exposition. If you're setting something up, don't let them know you're setting something up. So anyway, so I'm almost done. So I will be back to doing regular editions of Ask Chuck Dixon. But if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I did a 4-hour interview with John's Longbox. I'll probably put the link down below here, which is basically a month of Ask Chuck Dixon's because he asked me a bunch of questions, and we had a terrific conversation on several apparently controversial subjects. If you follow me on X, you'll know all about that. So anyway, let me get to my topic. You know how they say you should count till 10 if you're going to get angry? Don't tweet at 4 in the morning. Things like that. Like, give things some time. So I've given this a few days to simmer. You may have heard this, you may have not. If you're listening to this, I'll read you this headline from some clickbait website. Steve Englehart and Joe Staton reinvented DC Comics' Guy Gardner 40 years ago, and now they're finally getting the credit and money, beginning with the Superman movie this year. Now, Guy Gardner is a character from the 60s, and when he appeared, he was like an upstart Green Lantern, and he was a bit of a jerk, kind of an anti-hero character. And Steve Englehart and Joe Staton, and it's pretty clear here it's Steve Englehart doing most of the talking. Love Joe. I don't know Steve Englehart. Love Joe Staton. Loved working with him. He's just a sweetheart of a guy. True consummate professional. I would request to work with him all the time. We actually did Guy Gardner together for a while, and until he was fired, and I quit because he was fired. And we did a Batman thing together, which is one of my favorite Batman projects, that I had to fight to get him on because the editors didn't think he could do Batman justice, and of course he did, because he's Joe. He's awesome. So from all the articles I've read about this, I don't think Joe was the squeaky wheel here. There's nothing wrong with the squeaky wheel. That it was Steve Englehart. And Englehart is claiming that they reinvented Guy Gardner. Now, I agree they deserve credit, probably deserve credit in the Superman movie, because they did contribute to Guy Gardner, a significant portion of his history. But I don't understand reinventing, because to my mind, and I remember Guy Gardner's first appearance in Green Lantern in the Silver Age, and then reading him in the 80s and onward, I don't see where they changed all that much. Graham Nolan and we kind of rebooted the character Firefly, but we would not say we reinvented him. He still dealt with pyrotechnics. We just sort of gave him a deeper set of motivations. We made him a pyromaniac, but we didn't change his background. He was a movie special effects guy and everything else. So, and we gave him a much cooler costume, and basically made him a cooler character. And they've used him quite a bit. He's been action figures. He's been in the animated series. And he'll probably show up in the movies someday, if he hasn't already. So it's, our regret is we didn't rename him. If we renamed him, we would have gotten participation. But we're geeks, and we wanted to stay true to the Batman Rogues Gallery and basically fix a character that neither one of us thought was worthy anymore of being a Batman villain from his original iteration. If you've ever seen pictures of the original Firefly, it was an extraordinarily silly character, but we made him scary and sort of a Hannibal Lecter kind of guy, devious and dangerous. But we're not complaining, because those were the rules. If you altered an existing character, you didn't get any more money. This is the argument that DC used with me when I thought I should have received, myself and Tom Lyle should have received royalties from a Stephanie Brown as Robin action figure. And DC's licensing said, well, it's just another version of Batgirl. And I said, no, it's another version of Stephanie Brown. And we went back and forth, but they won. So that's what they do. They tire you out. But apparently they didn't tire Steve Englehart out. And he just, kept at them and kept at them and kept at them. And they, according to Steve Englehart, gave in. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? I mean, I didn't see the Superman movie. Did they get screen credit? As for money, DC Comics will, to their credit, pay discretionary funds. They will acknowledge, yes, you contributed greatly to this. And you once upon a time, you could call. I've told you before about how I called Paul Levitz when I saw the scene in Batman Begins, the Does It Come in Black scene. And I basically said, Paul, I wrote that scene. And I was the first guy to write that scene. And he agreed, and they sent me a check. Now, it wasn't a huge check, but I was grateful for it. They didn't have to send it to me. They were not legally obligated. Just as DC is not legally obligated to pay Steve Englehart and Joe Staton any money for quote-unquote reinventing Guy Gardner or whatever material of Guy Gardner they used that might have been used in the movie. Now, I don't deny them that money. I'm glad when freelancers get money. I'm a freelancer. I want to get money for things I did too. But generally, a lot of the stuff that I get money for, most of the stuff, 90% of the stuff I get money for from DC, I have papers, I have contracts, I have a participation agreement with the company. And I have received other discretionary funds. I got a pretty good check off of the Birds of Prey movie. Now, I never saw it, so I don't know what they used or what they thought, in what way they thought I contributed to that movie. But they did send me a decent sized check. And I've received payments for the creation of the Iceberg Lounge in the Penguin TV series. So I'm not complaining, and it is up to them. It is discretionary. So I guess Steve Englehart convinced them to loosen up their pocketbook and give him and Joe some discretionary payment. And God bless them. But that's what it is. It is a payment. It is not an ongoing percentage of the movie. And that's the impression the article I read left you with, that they were going to have an ongoing interest in the Superman movie. Now, let me tell you how that works. Once upon a time, if they featured a character you created in a movie, you received payments based on the significance of the character to the story, the amount of screen time they had, and the amount of dialogue they had. And that's how Graham and I were paid for Bane's participation in Batman and Robin, the regrettable final Joel Schumacher movie. But then we were informed when Bane was going to appear in Dark Knight Rises. This was after the fact. They made all kinds of crazy promises about the insane amounts of cash we were going to get from that movie. But then they informed us that DC Comics had renegotiated the definition of net receipts with Warner Brothers, which means they renegotiated their whole deal. And so no longer were the payments based. If I'm boring you, I'm sorry. But some of you are probably like, Chuck, this is fascinating. Go on. This is pure inside baseball. So rather than the payments being based on screen time, significance of story, and amount of dialogue, now Bane was one of 23 elements, quote unquote elements, in the movie that were licensed by Warner's from DC, remembering that Warner's owns DC. So this is a sweetheart deal here. So we asked for a list of the 23 elements, and it included the Batmobile, the Bat Signal, the Bat Cave. I mean, everything Bat was included. Commissioner Gordon. They were all included as elements that were licensed from DC Comics in order to make this Batman movie. And Bane was just one of 23. And they said that explains why you didn't get quite as much money as we told you were going to get from a movie that made, to this point, almost $2 billion. So that's it. Now, whatever kind of deal Steve Englehart and Joe Staton got out of DC, or whatever kind of agreement or discretionary payment, basically these discretionary payments come with a check and a letter telling you we didn't have to give you this, and not in so many words, but in legalese, we didn't owe you this and don't expect any more. It's like thank you. Here's some cash. Don't come back and ask for anything else. So it's a one-time payment, and I don't know what size it is. It can be decent, but it's not retirement money. It's not go out and buy a new car money. It's a payment. And so this is where you stand. And but the article leaves you with the impression that it's like an ongoing thing, that finally Steve and Joe get the recognition they deserve. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve it, but they're getting the recognition and the cash they deserve. And you could read that as they're going to have an ongoing participatory interest in Superman the movie. This new Superman movie, which broke even at the box office, will eventually become profitable through streaming and all the rest. I mean, maybe 2 years from now, it'll be in the black. But there's not a whole lot of money to spread around from this movie yet. So this one-time payment, and that's what you get. Now the thing that bothers me, the question I have to ask is, and the question the article raises, by sort of implying that Steve and Joe have an ongoing interest, is what about all the other people who quote unquote reinvented characters? Is every writer who turned an established character gay or bi or asexual now going to claim they reinvented that character, and each time that character appears anywhere in a toy or a TV show or a movie, they're going to say, I need money for that. Graham and I could make the argument we reinvented Firefly. We could even make the argument we reinvented Penguin. Of course, we've already been paid for that. In my 11-year run on Batman, I reinvented a lot of things, and I can make a lot of claims. But the granddaddy of them all, the one that really struck me as, boy, if this is true, they're going to owe this guy a big check, is Alan Grant truly reinvented Swamp Thing. I mean, he took Swamp Thing, which was a fine, decent, entertaining character that I loved in its first run, and he completely, literally reinvented it, basically telling you everything you knew about Swamp Thing is wrong, and here's why. They're gonna owe him something, because every iteration of Swamp Thing that came after his run has been Alan Moore. So does this open the floodgates? I mean, I know, because everybody in the industry saw this article. It kind of went viral within the freelancer community. You're going to have a lot of people calling DC Legal and saying, "Where's my cash?" I completely rebooted, Captain Potato Salad in 1996, and I deserve a little bit of that sweet cheddar from DC Comics. So that's the question I raise: is this going to happen? And it basically couldn't happen at a worse time for DC, for a bunch of freelancers, storming the gates, demanding their slice of the pie. So maybe we'll learn more about this down the line. But for now, I'm always glad to see a freelancer win a fight against DC. In the article, if you read the article, I'll provide a link below. They talk about Marvel, but you ain't getting no discretionary money out of Marvel. You're lucky to get anything out of Marvel, because it's all work for hire. They didn't do participation. Everything at Marvel is discretionary, including return of original artwork. So anyway, if I went a little too deep for you, sorry. So that's it for this week for Drive Time. And as I said, I'm almost done with this screenplay at this moment, but it will be done by the time you hear this, because I just have to do a write through, and that only takes a couple hours. And I will be back on a regular schedule as best I can with Ask Chuck Dixon and more Drive Times. So be good and keep your eyes on the road.